Hello, everyone, and welcome to this evening edition of Ramola D Reports. I'm Ramola D, and I'm here this evening again with Neelu Berry, with whom I recently did a news break on the extremely tragic story of her home being literally stolen and sold off in an auction in London. Neelu Berry is a pharmacist and a baby protection and child protection advocate and a whistleblower who unfortunately has been experiencing and reporting retaliation from the quote unquote system. So we're going to hear more about that today, and we're also going to hear about the current situation and the other thing that she started to talk to us about in the last report, and that was about the mass remedy process that her case is going to be a part of. So welcome, Neelu. Thanks so much for joining me today.
Thank you, Ramola. It's great to be here.
You're very welcome. So Neelu, let's talk about what really has transpired between last week and this week. Has anything new occurred? Has anyone sort of changed their mind and decided to give your house back to you?
Well, it's very strange because we've been trying to get access to my contents for the whole, 2 months, and they've been making so many excuses. And all of a sudden, we had a phone call to say, "Come and get your stuff."
Oh, that's progress.
Yeah, I mean, they're stuck because the auction is meant to be a recorded event, which it is. They have the cameras rolling. They have to show that they've, bid on the house reasonably. And you
Nice.
can see quite clearly that I disrupted the auction, as in I said, I've got the police report. This is a stolen property. But the way that they just carried on was as if they didn't really care if the property was stolen. And then the bidders carried on bidding, and the guy at the front carried on doing the bids.
I saw a little video of that, of you walking up to the front of the auction and saying, "This is a stolen property." And then the guy at some point said, "This is a repossessed property," and he just kept on going, right?
Mm-hmm.
What
Yeah.
happened? Yeah, so what is, I know we talked a little bit about repossession, and I'm sure we'll get to it at some point. So are you saying that the fact that that occurred, that there was a disruption in the auction proceedings, perhaps had an effect?
Well, it makes it void because I've said I'm holding I've got the police report, and they've been served with the court papers. So the court papers on Friday's application in the court 37 was put to them. They said they'd received it by the time I got there Monday about 1 p.m. and they'd received the police report. I'd made a police report, so they
Okay.
couldn't. They actually said that, oh, our client, meaning asset management group, I mean, their client should be the bank, but it's the third party. So they said, oh, Optima Legal Services has said, just carry on, ignore the paperwork, just carry on. And that's just proof of contempt of court. You see, you can't do
Right.
anything while something's sub judice in the court, whether it's they've given an order to say they're not going to stop the auction. I still have a right of appeal. Even though they say the permission is refused, I still have a right of appeal. You see,
Absolutely.
not many people know that.
Hmm.
So the judges are a bit naive, or they try to make people think, they mislead people by saying, oh, because permission's refused, you can't appeal. So I went back into the court on Tuesday to try to make an application to stop the sale.
Hmm.
And I realized the order that they gave me had the wrong reference number and the wrong parties. It had me as a defendant rather than the claimant, and it had the county court reference number put on by the High Court, and it had the High Court seal, but it had the bank as a claimant, whereas I was the claimant. I filed a claim on Friday, the 14th. So I decided not to put the application to stop the sale. I decided to get the order changed. So there was a different judge. He got the order. He agreed to change the order. But then when I went before him on the on the Friday, he decided that there must have been a reason why the county court reference number was there and why I was a defendant. He tried to justify it, having corrected it. So anyway, he's given me another order, which he's refused permission, which I'm still going to appeal it. But at the same time, I've got the police report. The police are supposed to be investigating the theft of my home. Now I've been assaulted in the auction, so that's going to be a crime report going to be filed by my friend who was with me, Lee Kant. And people can file the police report online now because they've witnessed me being manhandled and assaulted. I think people should do that. And if people have seen the CCTV footage of the theft of my home, they should do an online police report about the theft of my home. And this is how we can stop, these organized criminals, free for all, stealing whatever they want. Children, the children are stolen in exactly the same way. There is no.
That's very interesting, Neelu. Can I pause there for just a second? Are you suggesting that pretty much anybody who has witnessed this, who's seen this on video now, can actually file an online police report for you, in a sense?
They can do, yeah, because you see, people can be traumatized by watching something, and then you see they have a compensation for people. We're all watching how the state terrorizes people like Sabine McNeil, Melanie Shaw, and all our group have been terrorized. So there is no reason why we can't, express to the state, you're failing. You need to do this, you need to do that. And every report now, because we're on the page, the voluntary remedy page now. So the public servants are divided into the corrupt public servants and the honourable public servants who've been stepped aside by the corrupt ones. They call it the powers that be, or they say, up the grapevine, got the orders from above, and they have these invisible, masks.
Lines of authority that they keep to, and keep everybody else out.
Yeah. So we want these ones that have been sidestepped. They're the real professionals. You see, in the early 90s, when the council tax came in, that's when the professionals got stepped down. Then the managers came in, and they, profit-based pretense, but they were actually the ones with fake CVs, fake IDs. They're the ones who travel around. They go from one council to the other council, or they go abroad. If they're caught committing a crime, they'll pretend to put it in the papers that person has got early retirement, but they'll send them abroad and put the priest gown on and send them on a sabbatical. And they recycle these criminals all over the world. Even when they send them to jail, they're not in jail,
Yeah, you're talking in a sense about the infiltration at the very top in pretty much every system we've got in our society doing any kind of function, right? Whether they're in the courts or the hospitals or the police station or wherever. You're talking about part of this crime syndicate having infiltrated everywhere?
It's taken, the professionals are here, the real professionals, the honourable people. Then you've got these criminals who are the managers. And then above that, you've got the professional bodies who bless the crimes and the criminals. And if any professionals speak out against that criminal hierarchy, they will get rid of the professional. So I know that firsthand. And I know many other professionals who've been taken out by the professional body. So above the professionals are the criminals, and then above the criminals are the professional bodies, and above the professional bodies are the charities.
I see. In your particular case, Neelu, now you were a pharmacist, and are you talking about having experienced this as a pharmacist? So in a sense, the Pharmacists Association or whoever it is, the licensing authority sort of came down on you when you began to gain renown as a child advocate?
Right, so my sister made a complaint to them about the pharmacists who'd given the overdose.
Right.
And they turned that around and said I'd brought the profession into disrepute. Somehow they got me into that complaint. They came after me. Next thing I know is I'm struck off. And how they did it is the infringement committee of the Royal Pharmaceutical Society of Great Britain, they sit in on paper. They sit, behind closed doors, and it's not a public hearing. So they jiggled the facts, and it was a criminal cover-up of the murder of my niece, and it was turned into like that I was harassing these doctors, pharmacists, and nurses with my evidence. And it was all because the Royal Pharmaceuticals, all the professional bodies are headed by the secret society members, and they all have links with charities, so they get their authority by public giving them donations. You see,
So these are foundations that are beyond and above them, kind of tax-exempt foundations and organizations.
and for example, they've invented this disease called cancer. It's an invention because, if I recall, it was called the Cancer Act, and it was based on the premise that radium treats cancer, but actually radium causes cancer. And because
Is Marie Curie discovered, right?
yeah, and then anyone who claims to cure cancer, it's against the Cancer Act. They will be prosecuted. So nobody's
Wow.
ever allowed to make any claims of curing cancer because it's a fiction. It's actually a disease caused by itself. Basically, the treatment is the disease, and the disease is the treatment, as in chemotherapy is the only treatment allowed which kills the patient and does not treat the cancer.
That's right. Within the allopathic, the Western medical world, I guess the pharmaceutical world, that's the only treatment that's recognized, right? Chemo. What about alternative cures, though? I mean, they're still called alternative, but things like homeopathy and herbal cures and stuff, they're not considered within this sphere of allopathic medicine at all.
Well, the National Health Service took everything out. They won't give you
Okay.
ozone therapy or vitamin C injection or this maggot therapy, or any of this vitamin B17, laetrile, the bitter almond kernels. And even though those are effective, and now it's probiotics are coming in big time for cancer cures. And there are so many other millions of treatments, but the NHS only does chemotherapy. That's it.
I see.
Mm.
Yeah, that unfortunately I think is what pertains even over here in the hospitals, right? And this is why when you have a child who has cancer, and who's diagnosed with cancer, rather, then it becomes a huge issue with the parents if the parents choose not to give the child chemotherapy, right? It becomes something that engages the court system.
And when I actually did the research into my niece's, the organ theft and all that, I actually found out at the time there was a lot more material available on the net than there is now. And in those days they were selling, like, hearts were £50,000 and kidneys were £15,000 each.
Wow.
I mean, the whole body was worth £1 million dead. You're worth more dead than you are alive, because they even recycle old people's bones into teeth.
Oh my
You know,
goodness. And this information was on the net, is what you're saying, but because now you wouldn't be able to find that kind of information, right?
no, right. Yeah, so the cancer was very interesting because, when we abuse our body, say we smoke, the lungs get cancer. I mean, the blood supply doesn't get there, and they just become fibrous, and they just, are not part of the body. So the chemotherapy was designed actually to reverse it. It's called premature aging. Cancer is really a premature aging from abuse of your body. And the chemotherapies were actually anti-aging. They were anti-aging drugs.
Very
So
interesting.
that they needed to label people with cancer so that they could do the anti-aging, or they had to find ways of causing cancer, so that then they could have the subjects. Because in the UK it's all secret research. In America, at least they tell you they're going to, and they pay you if they're going to put you in a trial. In the UK, they do it secretly. They do it routinely secretly, and they
Oh,
don't.
I think both go on over here. I think there are the paid clinical trials, the more open, but there's a lot of covert medical experimentation going on over here as well. A lot of it is connected with the military and intelligence, though. But the universities and the big hospitals are indeed involved. They have been across time. It's horrifying.
Yeah, so the whole of the public service is treating the best of the best that we have as enemies of the state, because the state is a terrorist, you see. So we've come to this checkmate now, where we said, right, you're unfit for purpose. If you want to stay in your job, you have to do voluntary remedies. So we are getting voluntary remedies now.
That's really interesting. So what you are suggesting right now, Neelu, is that things have changed. I think basically you're suggesting humanity has started to get its message across, so that these people in power have begun to wake up and recognize that we are not going to sit back and accept the situation or the status quo as it is. We do demand that people do their jobs, and professionals act as professionals and serve humanity and serve the highest good, right? So, in a case like yours, for instance, where you are the subject of an injustice, you experienced an incredible injustice, your home was stolen, your home was auctioned off. Basically, you're saying if all of us come together and we start doing these reports on each other's behalf, and in this case, just for you, um, this is going to have even more of an effect because it sends that message, right, to the people in power that they can't simply roll over and forget what they've done. They have got to give you a remedy.
Yeah, we've got. I've just seen on my social media, because I don't have a television and I don't really watch the news, because I just came because I thought, well, if I'm not going to see my niece's story on the TV, I'm not watching TV. I don't need to
Yeah.
watch it, because I'm somewhere that the TV can't take me, can only take me away. But today I noticed on that three anti-fracking activists were jailed today in the UK, and there's quite a big thing about that at the moment. So we've got proof that the UK is a dictatorship. It's not listening to its people. It's not a democracy. Never has been. Never will be.
Mm-hmm.
There are groups, big groups of nationalists and patriots who have no idea what the ill intents of this country are against humanity all around the world. They don't want to know. They just think that England is infested with immigrants, but they have no idea how much damage England has caused all around the world, and caused poverty and slavery to 7.4 billion people with this counterfeit currency and these frauds, the health frauds, and these experiments. And so until I believe that the remedy will come globally or not at all. It won't come within a country, or even, I know the BRICS nations are trying to cut off from this pirate currency, and go gold, do the gold mandate. But I believe that we still have to clean up the mess in the West,
We
and that.
still have to clean up the mess in the West, absolutely, at so many, many levels. And one of the things that you started to say earlier was what's happening here with you, with a house being stolen and other people's houses being stolen, is very similar to children being taken, right? And that's a large part of this understanding, isn't it? That children are at the heart of this.
Right, and because Lord Danning said fraud vitiates all, or fraud unravels all. I mean, it doesn't matter how far you pull your elastic band, right?
Mhm.
if they've taken your children, they've taken your house, you got compensation, you got damages to put you right back to where you would be then. It's all fully reversible. All crime is reversible, as in, obviously, death is not reversible, but if my niece, say my niece died for a reason, and that reason was justified, and that's why she died, and she had to die, because otherwise we would not wake up to what is done to babies in millions of babies every year in on this planet. We wouldn't know that, you see, if she hadn't been criminally covered up by the entire UK system. We wouldn't know that they do this all around the world.
That they are exploiting babies in hospitals, that untimely deaths are being arranged, that organ harvesting is going on. And of course, that's one aspect of the exploitation of babies. There's also the whole foster care system, right? The child takeover system, using the child protection services as cover to swoop in and break up families and remove children, remove them into so-called foster care families or into orphanages, etc., whereby they become vulnerable to sexual exploitation and trafficking.
The reason why they had to create this fostering system was they had to create a race of dysfunctional human beings into the public services. And these are, I could call them psychopaths, but they actually have no humanness in them. They don't have any love, compassion, forgiveness, or gratitude. They're not, because if you're tortured from birth, your soul leaves the body, and then they can fill you. They want to fill you with obedience and slavery. So what we have, what people don't realize, is we have in all Western governments and Commonwealth governments, we have these basically slaves that have been groomed into becoming the slave masters. And so they run the empires of slaves. And it's all a global structure of these slave masters and slaves. So what they tried to do was to attack humanity, was to take away our free will, to put fear in us, because our free will is a creation. We create, and with fear we can't create, you see. So the reason why they had to create this fostering system was because they had all these children being mass produced and groomed for these top jobs in governments, through the churches, through the orphanages, through these foster parents and these fostering services. They had to have these children go and live with these psychopaths.
Right, the foster parents. I mean, we've heard and read so many stories of, the incredible abuse that children have faced in these foster families. And no doubt there are good foster families and, good people who want to adopt and foster children. But there's also this sort of substructure of horrific abuse that's being meted out to children in foster care.
You see, whenever we watch the mainstream media, we see the odd public servant who's done the odd crime, but we got, with the priests, we've got serial criminals, we've got,
right,
say,
repeat offenders.
The priests have fathered 500 children, thousands of children. They fathered the child. Is the father and the grandfather and the great grandfather of the same child. The generational this, and I mean they put these stories out as if, oh my God, this guy's done this, but they never get the priests, they never get the whole Vatican, they don't get the whole.
Oh no, yes, there's always a little bit of limited disclosure, limited, exposure of what's really going on, and then a kind of a cover up, and you forget about it. But what you're saying is we're talking about systemic abuse by pretty much 90% of the priests, probably. But we don't hear about that. We hear about, the lone cardinal doing it.
See, we never know. We never know where these people come from and where they get these names, because we found out from the Hampstead case that what happened when it all leaked out was, what they did was, all these children, then they had to change their identities. They pretended the reason was because people found out who they were, but they routinely change identities. Routinely, as soon as they find, they get caught out, they will ship them abroad, and then they will give them new jobs, new clothes, new uniforms, and they always get promoted. Always get promoted, because, oh dear, they got caught out and the show must go on, and they deserve a holiday, and they deserve a promotion, and it's but I'm hoping that it's all history now, because we have put them to shame. I mean, I don't think the process allows remedies. It only allows the denial of remedies. So, enforcement of remedies is it's overdue. And so now we've got, in the UK, we've got the commonlawcourt.com, and we've got the Pendragons. They want to get together and work with the common law court. So we're getting private police teams. So, if the state does not understand that we will, criminally prosecute, they do have personal liabilities for these crimes, we will get our remedies. We will take their assets. There will be asset seizures. There will be mass arrests, and there will be banishment. They will be banished from communities. They will not be amongst us.
How will this be enforced, though? You mentioned a police force. Now, is this going to be a police force that's substantial enough to be able to achieve this?
Well, apparently, the elite have always had their own.
I'm sure their own police, probably. Right?
So those police have always worked for money, you see. But people like me, obviously, don't have any money. I don't have any income, and I don't charge for my services. I do ask for donations occasionally when I'm, in serious trouble. But we can't afford the services of the police at the moment. I mean, the state is supposed to protect its whistleblowers.
Right.
If it calls itself a democracy, because
Right.
the voice of the people has to be protected, So I guess.
But this is not happening, right? The current system is such that the system is so Masonic, so secret society led, that they're working for that crime syndicate. They are not working for the people. So when there are people engaging in whistleblowing or calling attention to crime and corruption, they have no protection from this group of police, is what you are saying. So,
Yeah, I mean, we could ask for, voluntary police, as in certain people, like say Sabine McNeill and Melanie Shaw. They need protection from repeated. They are now becoming revolving door remand prisoners.
oh dear. I
Yeah.
don't really know what the story is with Sabine McNeill right now. Is she still facing some kind of arrest and removal of her property?
No, she was my. So what happened was, I stood outside this church on the 22nd of March 2015
Mm-hmm.
with 36 others who were concerned about the allegations made inside the church by the two children. I met Christine Ann Sands after she was inside, I was outside. I met her outside and we hugged. There was video made of this event outside. So the police, I was talking to the police the whole time the church service was going on. So he had his body camera on. He knew I was outside. I was accused of disrupting the church service when the police knew I was outside. Anyway, they put me through a one-day trial, saying that I'd harassed, well, I'd the Ecclesiastical Courts Jurisdiction Act 1860,
Oh, wow.
that are disrupted, because the churches used to be courts before, you see, and everything was conducted in churches. So, but they have to have a court hearing taking place, but there wasn't. It was just a church service. So they twisted it. Anyway, it was a no case to answer. And the second trial went ahead. Then they added Sabine to my second trial, which was uploading some material. And because Sabine had gone to Germany in February 2015, and Ella Draper had gone to Germany at that time, so had Abraham Christie had gone out as well. So then they came and broke my door 4th of April. No, they arrested me outside the Ecuadorian embassy with Christine Ann Sands. We were put, that was the one-day trial that I had, and she had gone back to America. That's how she got out of that. And they carried on with me, break my door on the 29th of April and the 22nd of April, and they three or four times they came and broke my door, handcuffed me, took me and locked me in a cell for 10 days.
Oh,
It was so many days, and they kept breaking my door. Anyway, they put me on a trial for 6 days, and it all collapsed before half time. They put a restraining order on us, even though it collapsed. It was a contempt of the jury, because a judge sent the jury out and said, even though the case is, collapsed, I'm going to put a restraining order. He had no authority to do that. It was a jury trial. So Sabine has been put in remand under the pretenses that this restraining order is valid, and it isn't, you see. And so they keep terrorizing her and breaking a door and she's a 74-year-old disabled person, and she went to EU Parliament, and she basically highlighted the child sex industry of the UK. And in a report, EU 2011 EU 92 is the report. I can make it available to you. The crime report is the crime report, and it says that the UK has got the worst record for child sex slavery in 2011, and they said fix it, and they didn't. They just went after us. They went after the child protectors, you see. You see, I had basically left my niece's case aside, because I thought, well, okay, it's only one baby. But when these two children described how they were made to take eyeballs out from the babies, and you're talking about a 7-year-old and an 8-year-old being able to do that, and I thought that really stuck in me, and I thought there's something, you cannot make that up, And now Ella Draper's passed the the truth test, whatever you call that. She's
polygraph.
Passed, yeah, she passed it. So the judge had said that that Judge Pawley, they had to retire her. So the polygraph test proves that she was telling the truth, and Judge Pawley had said that that the mother had to have made them lie, because I'd gone to do the research into the medical file for these children, you see. And I found the evidence that they could not have been lying, because they had anal, this reflex anal dilatation that you can only have if you've been, sodomized, basically. So we tried to make an application. Belinda and I made an application in the court to try to, whilst Ella was out, while Sabine was out, we tried, and Judge Pawley had gone on this break. But when we went to court to get the judgment on the 19th of March, and it had been uploaded by midday, you see, but they didn't have a hard copy, which was odd. So it was almost like somebody had done the judgment for them.
Oh, I
It
see.
wasn't the judge. The judge's clerk didn't have the hard copy. So it was very dodgy. They said, oh, if you want the judgment, you have to go online. They didn't have hard copies for us. And when we read that, went round the corner and read that there was about 12 of us. We went there, and and I read it and I thought, you know, this is a criminal cover-up, because you got this anal, this reflex anal dilatation, and that's not normal for two children, two siblings to have that,
Mm-hmm.
you know.
There was
So
physical evidence, in other words, and there was a
yeah.
huge cover-up going on. I'm glad there were 12 of you. Did anything happen to the others? Have you all experienced some kind of retaliation?
Well, no, there were 36 of us originally,
Oh,
but when I was outside the Ecuadorian embassy, the police had these sheets, the police cam. They'd used the footage of that to take mugshots of the 36 people.
your video is freezing. Okay, you're back.
Yeah, so they'd found me and Christine off these mugshots, you see. So if anybody, it was just we were unlucky, but they wouldn't care who they were going to take in that day. But I really don't mind it was me, because um, I've got a certain perception people generally don't have. So I'd rather it's me than them,
Mm-hmm.
because I can take things a bit further, and I can go into a bit more detail. So I don't mind being the baby in the woods every time, But I do feel for Sabine, that she's of an age now, and I think she's such a great woman. The achievements she's done, the dedication she's done, and she's worked with other people, like Belinda and Deborah Remedies,
Mm-hmm.
to do these reports, the crime report, the Hampstead crime report, and these are amazing documents. The historical documents, nobody has ever
Correct.
put this stuff in such details. Even the EU document doesn't do it in that way that we have. So yeah, we've done a lot. Looking back on it, it's amazing what we've done, but the system just doesn't know how to eject Sabine and Melanie, and we need to eject people from prisons, and we need to eject the children from these being held hostage by these psychopaths, these so-called foster parents, and they've actually done a few U-turns in a couple of cases where they've put some children into family members, where, say, we had a youth worker in Enfield Council called Stefan Kadek. He was jailed for 2 years in July last year. He was found with, say, 94,000 images and videos of child porn. Now, he was communicating with one of the mothers who had 6 children taken from her. He was emailing her, and he got the dates of birth of these children. So as part of his criminal prosecution, they may have found these emails that he had acquired these information of these children. But so what they did, whilst he's in jail, whilst he's being investigated, whilst he's arrested, say in May 2016,
Mm-hmm.
in July 2016, they shipped 4 of these 6 children to Cyprus to live with families over there, because they panicked. They thought, well, they've got this man with this stuff, and then they've got these emails where he's exchanged these dates of birth of these children, so that they could have been, as part of his catalogue. And so they've shipped them into families, and now 2 of those children have been returned to the mum through the family. You see,
Well, at least the children were returned, right?
yeah, yeah. One of the children had a severe spinal scoliosis, and they weren't able to treat her in Cyprus, so she's able to come back to England to have her treatment, and she's actually having it today.
Oh, wow.
She
Okay.
had a surgery today. It's coincidental that we're
That's,
talking about it.
yeah, that's really interesting. So it sounds like you keep in close touch, though. You're still working as a child protection advocate. You're still keeping in touch with all the cases and so forth.
Well, you see, I recruit cases for equity lawyer Edward William Ellis. As people come to me, I
Hmm.
do the summaries, I do the documents scanning, and I send them to Edward, and then he does puts it into, you know, the mass remedy, the 200 whatever 300 cases that he has. He has to fit them into making them all live cases, as in current cases, so that he can then go in and see what the judge will do, you see.
Hmm.
And because things are changing, and what they think they got away with before, they can't get away with anymore. So for example, we had the breast baby case where they took a baby from the breast. The social worker came with a different name to the one that she's registered under, and when we asked her on oath, well, you can't do that, she said, I can call myself whatever I like. She said that on oath.
Oh my
And the judge,
goodness. I hope you recorded that.
no, it's all in the transcripts, you see, because when Edward does the case, the Royal Commission get the tapes. They get the transcripts
Okay.
automatically of all the cases. So the judges are not aware that actually when we go to court, we're actually just baiting them up for the Royal Commission, you see. I mean, it takes the Royal Commission a couple of years to get rid of the judges, but sometimes they leave the judges there just to, because they don't want to upset the system too much, as in they want to clean the whole corruption, so they let it spiral a bit more, you know. So
Are
I
you suggesting, however, that the Royal Commission is not corrupt?
well, there are, you know these royals that came from India.
Yeah, the Indian Royal. Okay.
you know you know they went to places like Wales and Scotland and Ireland and
Oh, I'm
all
sure.
over the world, right?
Hmm.
So they all had to have a mansion, this
Oh,
was their
of
holiday
course.
home. The mansion was the holiday home, but they have the marble palaces back home, right?
Right.
With the 200 rooms. These are just 10 bedrooms, they're just tiny.
Oh,
So,
right.
right, so these
They're
mansions.
slumming it in Wales. Yeah.
so, so I have a little tease with my friends because Edward is white Gandhi. He's actually the reincarnation of Gandhi.
Oh, really?
Yeah, yeah, he is.
Oh, my goodness. Well,
Yeah,
that's
he
very
is.
interesting.
Yeah, he is. Right. And then a lot of my friends, like Tom Crawford, they're white supremacists, but they don't realize they're actually reincarnations of the Indian royals.
Oh, my gosh.
Because they have to be, you see, because the filth is here that has to be cleaned out, and it needed those people who suffered here and were held hostage here, and they were ripped out. Their palaces were all basically shipped out all over the world, like the White House and at St. Paul's Cathedral, this white marble. Where do you get it from except India?
Mm-hmm. And they were shipped out on these huge barges. I mean, you were telling me some of these stories earlier. So actually, Neelu, we have to do a sort of a historical report at some point, maybe just talk India and Maharaj. That would be very interesting. But I think I should probably say for people who don't know anything about Neelu is that she has this sort of very insightful reincarnative look at reality, which obviously spans, time periods, not just this time period, but another time period. And this comes from her very special gifts, and she's spoken about this before. So that's very, very interesting, Neelu. So this whole notion of England needing to be cleaned out and the Royal Commission being able to step in and actually remove corrupt judges once they've been found unfit. And so, what the equity lawyer, Mr. Ellis, is doing is, in a sense, going through the process of taking a lot of cases, looking at how they dealt with individually in courts by judges, and then trying to find out if that judge is, doing the right thing or is proving that he's unfit. Um, right? And corroboration of these unfit cases, in a sense, and the adding up of it is going to lead to the mass remedy process. Is that sort of how it's being done?
Well, then we're at the voluntary remedies stage now, you see, where we're saying we do accept that there are good people who've always been there, but they've been sidestepped, and that they need to take charge, as in the professionals, that you've had the corrupt managers and the corrupt CEOs, the profit-based policies. When these good people, they know that they've been sidestepped away from their oaths to God to maintain God's laws, serve and protect God's children. We only require serving and protecting. We don't require terrorism.
No, definitely not. Not social terrorism. Not everyday terrorism.
So they know that. You see, some good people in office know that, and even the Royal Commission are these people who have had to go into hiding. You see, they're almost like, they call it the Royal Commission, but they're probably just people like you and me.
Okay, so you're saying that there are really good people on this commission whom we can trust and who
Yeah.
are interested in seeing good being done and service to humanity being done. They're humanitarians,
Mm.
first and foremost, rather than terrorists.
I mean, the dedication that, Edward has, I mean, why I say that, because obviously I know him relatively well, because, I was on this journey, and then he came, basically both my dads died, were murdered. And then that was
Oh,
like 2011 and 2013. And then Edward came and found me in June 2016, you see. And without him, I couldn't have taken the work of my two dads forward. I couldn't have done that. And it's like a divine mission and because Gandhi was murdered in January 1948 and Edward was born four years later, he probably thinking in that 4 years, how am I going to sort this out? How dare they kill me? I'm going to go to the filth. I'm going to go to where it's all started. I'm going to, and then for him to be born in England. And
that's very interesting, Neelo. I have to ask, how does Edward know that he's the reincarnation of
well,
God?
he doesn't know that. I tease him about it.
Oh, he doesn't know that. Is it something that you know? Is it
People
something
don't
that
know that. People don't have to know that. All I know is Gandhi set up the League of Nations in 1919. In 1930, he bankrupted all countries to stop them mandating pirate currency, right?
That's
And
right, with Roosevelt and so forth in 1933. And
the
this was after the
1930s,
Fed Reserve was formed and everything.
they brought in the pirate mandate, and they stole the UCC template. And Gandhi was basically busy trying to quarantine the gold under the Indonesian Ocean.
Oh, he was. This is just striking me. He was alive during this time period. So,
Yeah,
are you saying he was actively aware and actively trying to rebut?
he would have quarantined the gold in on the 17th of August 1945. That's why they had to kill him, to hide that fact.
Oh,
You see, because in 1963 was when JFK was with Mr. Sukarno, and they signed the Green Hilton Agreement to mandate
right.
the gold, but without the gold, it was a gold standard. So that they had to honor us, they had to give us like the liability, public liability, but then they never did honor us. They never paid the insurance. They never gave us, when we were sick, when we lost our jobs, they were meant to cover it, and they never did. So we were basically treasoned by the, and Gandhi and Sukarno and many others since then have tried to mandate the gold. Even 9/11 happened to stop the gold mandating. Because
Really?
yeah,
9/11 is connected to
yeah,
that?
very much so. Yeah, because there was a National Economic Security and Reformation Act of 2000, because
Mhm.
the farmers from Germany went to America, and they were judges, and then the USA state, tried to steal their farms to basically probably build underground bases. and they went to court and proved that no corporation can own land, and no currency can trade outside gold. So that then the gold mandate, that was the day, the 11th of September 2001 was the day that was meant to, the computers on the floors of that Twin Towers had the calculations for what each one of us would get in our gold share, which is the calculations of Swiss Indo, you see, which is what had to happen in Mr. Sino, King of Kings in Indonesia. He then had to work it all out, you see. And I've got all the paperwork because I'm a delegate for Swiss Indo.
Oh.
I'm a volunteer for them. I promote them. SwissIndo.news.
Perhaps we should do a report just on this so that everybody understands from the ground up what this is all about, because we're sort of hearing it in bits and pieces. It sounds fascinating, but I don't know if I'm getting the whole gist. I know I've read a little bit about this here and there, but I don't know it like you do.
Yeah, it's quite exciting, really, because we've had, with Gandhi quarantining the gold, you see, on the 17th of August 1945, that 70-year quarantine under quarantine laws is that because man lives for 70 years, if you hide something for 70 years, it doesn't belong to anybody, it belongs to everybody equally, you see.
I see.
So because the Federal Reserve Act made gold redundant, because they said we don't need it.
They did, yeah. They removed everybody's gold, right? I mean, they stole
Yeah.
everyone's gold. They went house to house and grabbed gold over here in the States.
So then Gandhi thought, right, that's a good idea. I'll just round up all the gold, because it was borrowed gold anyway. It didn't belong to them. Took it back to the east, put it under the Indonesian Ocean, and then the Indonesian government wasn't the government, the proper government then, because now it's a bit dodgy government there because it's the Western government control. So that was on the 17th of August 2015 was when we mandated gold from the quarantine expiry.
I see.
So we're due our $6 million each since that date, and $1,200 to stay at home per month for each adult, and $600 per month per child just to stay at home, and you get more if you work, plus $150,000 of debts forgiven.
Is this everybody on the planet? Is that what you're doing?
That's how much gold there is. There's 7 billion kilograms of gold.
So is that why you think we are looking at a global surveillance state now, and we're looking at this lunacy, this war on terror, all of the wars, the fabricated wars, after 9/11, the Patriot Act, and the NSA being in charge around the world, having access to all the satellites, everybody being surveilled to bits, everybody being, repressed to bits. Is that why you think it's
all distractions, anything to keep people in fear and to stop them having their free will and their divinity? Because our gold is our divinity, you see. God says we have this planet to share and enjoy in prosperity and joy, you see. And
I'm sure God said that right at the start. I don't know if gold was needed for that, but is gold needed for that?
Well, the gold metal actually has a certain frequency, and it carries a low frequency, apparently. And this Mother Earth needed a certain amount of gold on it. And what they'd done, they had removed this gold from this planet to bring it into inferior frequency. They literally had shipped it to another planet.
So this goes back to the stories of the Anunnaki and stuff?
Well, no, I think in the last 100 years they did that.
Just now.
The underground.
Our humans over here. The last 100 years. Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
Since the 1954 Greada Treaty, the underground bases did that. They took out all the gold, and
that's what they were doing underground. Among other things, we know the other horror stories that are coming out of those underground bases, the genetic engineering, etc.
The angels took out the underground bases in 2011. They're finished. They're gone, and they deactivated all nuclear weapons in like in 1975. There are no nuclear weapons activated on this planet.
But nuclear weapons are talked about every single day. I mean, if you
They
look at
don't
the
exist. They
Department of
don't exist.
Defense news, they're talking about nuclear weapons and nuclear war, and but
Yeah,
they don't exist, is what you're saying.
they haven't existed because Phil Schneider talk they in America there's a Californian club, New York club of some. I'll find it for you. I'll put the links up for it. Anyway, these are the top secret engineers and research and scientists who had witnessed how these beams of light that draw the crop circles.
Oh yeah,
They'd
yeah.
gone to each head, the nuclear head, they'd gone in 4 directions, and with every 4 seconds, a nuke went down, and all their nuclear heads went down. I mean, this is an official account by the witnesses.
Oh, I'd love to see that. I've read various random events about people seeing UFOs on ships taking out nuclear weapons and stuff, Navy ships, etc. I think Kerry Cassidy has done a few shows on that. But that's interesting. If there is a written account somewhere, I'd love to see it.
Yeah, they meet every year, and they've been meeting like for decades now. This group, um, Mr. Salas comes to mind. There's Salas. I think Steve Greer is in with them.
I see.
Yeah, that group, press club, press
The
club.
National Press Club?
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, National Press Club of, I think it's in California.
Okay, I'll look into
Mhm.
it.
I'll send you
Interesting.
the link anyway. Oh,
Okay, thank you. Yeah, and maybe we can put it below this video because, this is a public conversation we're recording here. So, very interesting, Neelu. Talking to you, of course, takes us in very many different directions all the time. But the story about the gold is absolutely mind blowing. So basically, you're saying that we've gone over that time period and the 70-year quarantine or whatever, and then beyond that you had 9/11, and now you have all this madness, the surveillance state. But you feel that we're now at a point where things are changing?
you see, God never loses. He only lets people take the long way round when they've got mischief in their minds, because He allows them to play a bit and then realize they're not going to win, and then change sides. So people have been saying, well, when will it happen? When will it happen? When we're ready for it to happen? The masses have to be ready, and because they want to limit the damage that's done. There isn't going to be any Armageddon or any destruction of the planet.
I'm
Um,
so glad to hear that because there's so many of these stories. A meteorite is coming, an alien mothership is coming, the tsunami is going to hit, all of these stories. And I just look at them and go, okay, well, if it really is going to happen, there's nothing you and I can do about it. So why bother thinking about it?
Not going to happen because that deadline was 21st of December 2012. That's finished. We're in the golden age of Satyug. Satyug has started anyway. And these children that are being born now are divinities. They actually are gods that are being born as of now. Because it's not easy to bring a child into this world.
No, it's
It's
very
such a
dark right now. If you look at just the human spectrum, it's very dark, the things that are going on, that each of us has borne witness to and can bear witness to. Um,
Yeah, it's actually really beautiful. Actually, the place, how people have become so humble in their poverties, and they're modest, and like you and I, we're just complete strangers, and yet we're having this conversation that it's got to be a divine mission. Otherwise, how could we be connected at every level on everything we discuss? Unless we have been kind of connected to the
That's
same.
very true, Neelu. And I should tell people we've been Skype texting, and Neelu's been sharing absolutely mind-blowing information with me from her research, which kind of resonates a little bit with my own research. So, in a sense, I'm very open to hearing this. And it has to do with India's history, of course. Research that I did while working on my first novel, and research that you've been doing on your own as well. And I remember telling you need to write a book about it, and you said you couldn't, that you don't really believe in writing books or something.
No, I'm happy for people to contact me with their research and my research, and we just get this whole jigsaw puzzle put together. If there's any missing pieces, then I'm happy to provide them.
Yes, absolutely. I think some of the stuff that you found out is so amazing. And I know some other people probably are, discovering the same kind of things, but it's not public knowledge in the sense that it's not open knowledge. It's not openly spoken about. So it almost seems as if we are living in a time period where there is a great deal that's coming out, right? And it kind of stands to reason that this kind of stuff that's coming out would also be from our history, from the history of all of our countries. And it's very interesting that India's history, of course, is so closely tied to British history. And there you are sitting in London. And you grew up in London, right? You went to school there?
Yeah, I was born in India. I was 9 when I came over, and I hated it here. I really missed my granddad in India, and I've always wanted to be in India. So when I was 16, I started going to India in my holidays. I'd go. And then
Mm-hmm.
I joined this faith, like the nuns. I'd go and live with the nuns in India, and I learned about the philosophy of basically the five evils. They call it the five evils.
Hmm.
The ego, the anger, the
Oh,
emotion, the
I see.
lust, um, and then I realized that was they were wrong to say that we had weaknesses. They were weaknesses because those things can be strengths as well. So I've learned that we were taught wrong in India. They've made people brainwashed into believing that all problems you perceive are inside you, but they never attack the governments. The religions were supposed to be correcting the faults in the governments, because in the olden days the gods were the kings, but then they started having the advisors different to the kings, and that's where the religion side of it went downhill. So then I think there are a lot of faiths in India. They try to split the women from their husbands and their duties as to their children. There's a lot of issues in India that need addressing. So I think their international platform is the mass remedy for all. I believe that once this country's cleaned up, the rest of the world will need cleaning up. That would be a bigger job.
I would imagine, yes. I mean, there's so much, right, that's entrenched in the systems and cultures that each of us have grown up within, that we're now finding is just plain false, that it's all been imposed. Nothing is inevitable. Many, many imposed structures that can indeed be pushed away. But the question is, how do you push them away? How do you create the golden age within the worlds that we have? Because right now we are living in conditions of imposed, almost fascism, kind of totalitarianistic, oppressive governments. So, how do you move from that scenario to each one of us finding our own, divine selves and beginning to exist as humanity working for the good of each other?
Hmm.
It's a huge question, I suppose.
Yeah.
But you're saying it is connected to this mass remedy process, that, it kind of starts there, that we begin to, in a sense, reclaim space for ourselves through this mass remedy process, through using the court process.
And it's to do with the prosperity. It is to do with the gold. It is to do, the divinity is the prosperity and the gold. You see, because the enslavement is the fear and the lack of free will, and the opposite of that is once we are contented, then we can have free will. Once we're in fear, we can't. So the prosperity is linked to our divinity in the sense that
Right. Right,
we don't see
absolutely. You
ourselves.
need money to survive in in any case. I mean, within any system, you need a modality of being able to be self-sufficient. You need a means of currency. and that's money. And what you're saying is what we really need is gold, money that's solidly backed. And very interesting about gold having this frequency of love and that it's connected to the earth, etc. That is kind of interesting. Something to explore in our next conversation, perhaps, Neelu,
Hmm.
um,
Definitely.
when you can tell us more about the whole Swiss Indo
Yeah.
setup, since you
Yeah.
understand it, etc. Is there anything more you'd like to cover today, that you'd like to leave people with? Can people across who are outside the UK go and do the online police report, or or is this only for people in the UK? That's a question I
I'll
wanted to
put the
ask.
link up. I'll put the link up, and then they could try. It would be interesting to try it from abroad because, you know, if humanity was concerned about the failings of the state, the UK state,
Hmm.
then the UK state might feel a bit embarrassed that the world was watching, and who's watching and who's. But I will say that the police are known to target people, my friends. So, you'd have to be protected, fully protected before you do it. It's not just, you know what I mean?
Right, absolutely. Yeah, I know exactly what you mean. I have to tell you that in the last couple of weeks, covering both your case and Seven's case, I've been sensing that there is some anxiety over here because I'm getting a lot more COINTELPRO than usual. Now, I have been covering cases like yours for a long time, and I've been experiencing all sorts of targeting, wrongful targeting, of course, just like the kind that you experience, directed at me. And every now and then, when I do an article or a podcast that's particularly important, I see a real sort of uptick in the reaction on the roadways, and I've definitely been seeing that the last couple of weeks. And of course, their usual attempts to assassinate, which they keep working on. But I'm well shielded, so uh, it's not going to happen to me. But because stories like yours do need a world audience, do need people like me to put the stories out there. And, we're all just working together to get the information out and to share it with larger numbers of people. We kind of all have to jump in and take an oar, and that's sort of how I see it.
Yeah, I've got a friend, Jennifer Nelson. I'd like to ask if she's okay. She came and saw me like in June, and I haven't heard from her since. So I'm a bit worried about her. She's an advocate. She helps people in the
Hmm.
cases, goes to courts, and then she just suddenly disappeared off the scene. So I hope she's gone somewhere safe and on
Oh,
holiday.
that is not good to hear at all. I hope you do get back in touch with her and find out what's going on.
Yeah, many of people have come to my home to see me and to see Edward because that's where they see Edward.
Hmm.
They've had police harassment, thereafter outside my house just as they're leaving, and another friend of mine has had his, van broken into
Hmm.
and
I
things like
think in all cases like that, Neelu, the thing to do is to report it. And I know you have your own channel, right? Your own YouTube channel, and you have a Twitter feed. I think it's important to film and record everything you can, and
that.
simply to report events as they occur.
Yeah.
It's something I have to remind myself of, but I'm starting to do more of it myself. It is important to let other people know because, in a sense, we are trying to get a message across that, even as we stand up and we work for, in your case, you're working for children. In my case, I'm just helping put people's stories out. As we're doing it, we also need to send a message that, we should have the space to do it. We should not be harassed. That
Mm.
that is not acceptable, so.
Yeah. Yeah, I'd like to give a message out to the governments of this world to start um, looking upon the people in the West as hostages of their governments, to assist them, with offering them safe places to stay, people like myself, abroad, so that the UK state gets the message that, it doesn't have the power to stop the work that we are talented um, people. Our talents would be so wasted if we couldn't go abroad and do carry on the work that we are being stopped from doing in the UK, that we need the international governments to offer us, as I like to use the word, asylum, or some kind of royal recognition of our work, and give us the credit that we deserve, that the UK would never give us, because the UK is a criminal state until it realizes that it's it's a democracy, until what it should stop disinforming the world of its what's the word, imposturing of these crimes, against us.
That's a wonderful message, and it's kind of an appeal, I guess, to any government officials from other governments who may be watching or listening, to take note, especially of child protection advocates in the UK, and to provide them space and asylum and refuge and sanctuary so that they can continue their work. As you say, your talents and your warrior spirit and your fierceness and your determination to fight for humanity, these are powerful gifts that all of humanity, would appreciate if they had a chance. So hopefully, if the UK government is, treating you badly,
Mm.
then other governments should indeed step forward, as you say. Yeah.
Yeah.
But it also sounds like you're also saying that the UK government has a chance, right? Has
Mm.
every opportunity here to kind of roll back the bad behavior and come forward and make things better again and make things right again. Unfortunately, we're also dealing with entrenched systems, and that's sort of the underlying basis of our conversation over here. We are dealing with entrenched systems that are um, running criminal operations on humanity, criminal and enslavement operations on humanity. So when you're dealing with sort of hardcore criminals, then we have to look to each other. We have to look to the good governments, the good professionals, the good people in society to step forward and support each other, right?
Mm.
Yeah. So on that note, let's put that link below that you mentioned, Neelu, for anybody to do a kind of a sympathetic online police report on
Mm.
your behalf to protest the stealing of your home,
Mm.
and send a message across to the UK government, UK police, that this is not acceptable and really does paint the UK in a very bad light,
Mm.
this kind of stealing of people's property. Yeah. So, thanks so much for joining me this evening. It's been a wonderful, very interesting, wide ranging conversation. And you've opened out a lot of pathways for us to explore for the next time. So, I look forward to having you back, Neelu,
It's
and doing
always
it.
a pleasure. Thank you so much. Thanks, Ramola.
You're very welcome, Neelu. Bye, everyone. Thank you for watching. Bye bye.